I'm Wyatt Elliott from Notebook Entertainment.
And this is Horrorland News. So we have a few stories we want to kind of discuss with you guys before we get to our regular review this segment. The first is Halloween Kills news, which, I know I promised last episode
Liar!
that we would not have all Halloween Michael Myers news.
To be fair, this just dropped
this week. So Halloween Kills is going to be released October 15th, as we all know, in theaters, but it's also the same day going to be released on Peacock. There could be a little bit of pushback on this because a lot of theaters are getting, they're struggling. Theaters are struggling right now, as are a lot of businesses. And Universal had actually made an agreement with the theaters that any movie from them, if they made over $50 million opening weekend box office, they got like a 31-day grace period or threshold before it went to streaming. Under 50 mil, it got a 17-day grace period. But either way, they had time where it was just in the theater. This is a big anticipated opening for Universal. So I understand why they want to give people as much opportunity to see it, plus boost up their Peacock streaming service. But I also kind of get it from the other side why theaters are getting frustrated.
Sure.
So we discussed Halloween. So we're going to real quick go over to talk about some Texas Chainsaw Massacre news. So yeah, we've all kind of heard that they already had greenlit it. Last year before, something like that. So it's going to air now. The new movie is going to air on Netflix. Speculation is saying they're guesstimating it's probably going to be announced soon and released in October as an October release for Halloween.
Only makes sense. Like, why would you not?
Right.
I mean, first of all, it's a direct sequel to the original.
Yep.
The way we understand it.
Yep. Netflix acquired the rights to all of Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Legendary Pictures. So producer Fede Alvarez was on the Boo Crew podcast, and he was quoted as saying, "It is a direct sequel, and it is the same character. It is Old Man Leatherface."
Oh.
So it is. It's gonna be from the first movie, and then it's going to pull a Halloween and just forget all the other movies.
Well, there's a lot to forget.
And just be a direct sequel to the Tobe Hooper original. Someone who's of the opinion that he was just protecting his home from random-ass people who just walked into his house uninvited. I mean, it's Texas. They have stand your ground.
Save that argument for a different show. Because it will be made. But so I'm excited. It's cool, and
they're gonna try and make it feel like the original. Because in the same interview, Alvarez is also quoted as saying that he was gonna compare it to what they did when they filmed The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
So he said specifically, quote, "Never VFX, to do everything on camera. It's a very old school approach to filmmaking. Vintage lenses. It's very similar to the original."
Well, he's the one who did the remake of Evil Dead, and he works really closely with Sam Raimi. So that when I found that out, that gives me a little more hope about the project.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm excited that they're gonna try and match it to look the same too.
I would love to see that.
Because it's a very artistic film, the original. Yeah. If you haven't seen it in a while, it is a very artistically shot film.
Oh, for sure.
Gorgeous film. So we got big news out of the 2021 PlayStation Showcase event. Insomniac Games announced that they cast Tony Todd as the voice of Venom in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 game.
Yes, we will.
So we just want to do one quick last story before we get to our review this segment. Our friends and horror hosts, HEXEN Arcane, they're doing a bunch of videos about different legends and different spooky places and haunted areas that they visit when they're doing their filmings. And one of their most recent videos is about
the still unsolved case of what has been dubbed Little Lord Fauntleroy of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
On the morning of March 8th, 1921, a worker for the O'Loughlin Quarry was out on a walk, and he saw something very disturbing in the quarry pond. What he found was the body of a little boy between 5 and 7 years old floating in the water.
And they never could identify him. So we're going to put a link. I don't want to give away too much. We'll put a link to their video about this in the description so that you can see what they have to say about it. I don't want to step on their toes.
No.
But the big thing and the reason I'm sharing their story is because they've actually put together a petition, which we'll also put a link to try and get DNA testing to finally see if we can figure out who this little boy is.
Please. Let's put this kid to rest, please.
So yeah, I guess that's about it for the news section. So now it's time for our weekly review this.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great!
Well, it was pretty good.
It stinks.
So today we're covering brand new film just came out called Malignant.
From director James Wan, and it's in theaters now, or you can watch it on HBO Max.
What we'll do is we'll go ahead and kind of give our first impressions of the movie, spoiler free. Talk about as much as we can, and then we'll let you know when it's a spoiler section so you can go watch the movie and then come back and watch the rest of this.
Alright, so our first impressions of Malignant.
I feel like, and I wrote down here in my notes, that within the first 20 minutes it just felt uncomfortably tragic. It just goes into this horribly tragic story that you're following now, and everything's so drab in the color schemes and everything that you just it was uncomfortably tragic. I felt like I was watching almost a drama or a Lifetime movie.
This movie feels super low budget, but yet it's James Wan's the director.
Which goes with the story, I guess.
Yeah.
That oppressive feeling. But
Yeah.
you feel that as you're watching. It's not a joyful watch. Definitely, it's not a fun watch.
I mean,
and it does pick up.
moments.
I'm not saying that it's tragedy the whole way through. It does pick up and get back to horror roots and everything. But for after the opening, the first 10 to 20 minutes of the movie, I'm I feel sad.
Look, this movie does have its slasher elements that I think slasher fans can enjoy. And I did enjoy some of it.
Yes.
There is parts of this movie that I found enjoyable.
Yes, the scenes, the sequence, the special effects where the world around her is kind of melting into a different world. Those are great visual effects.
Yeah, but there wasn't a ton of practical effects. There was a lot of CGI and the blood. And
the blood, that was a little. There was some good gore.
There was. Yeah, there is
but
some
a lot
good
of
gore.
it seemed a little too CGI.
But I think what gives it really a cheap feel, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, is some of the acting is just not what I felt should.
The two little girls, the little
Those
girl
kids are good.
that played younger Madison, and then the little girl that played younger
sister.
Serena.
Yeah.
No, not the sister. Younger Serena.
Younger Serena, yeah.
Both those teenage girls were fantastic. Everyone else, they had their on and off moments.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they weren't terrible, but there was some of it.
And it wasn't even over the top, campy fun.
No, it felt like if this was an independent filmmaker's movie, I'd be super impressed with the acting. Yes. But I feel like they should be beyond that with this level of film.
The problem is with the story. Before we get into the spoilers of why, I just want to say broadly that the story feels pieced together of stuff that's already been done.
Yeah.
Done famously. So it didn't feel as new or as revolutionary as it could have.
As it probably should have, as they probably intended it to be.
Right. Because if you're a horror fan, you've seen these horror elements elsewhere and done better.
And even sci-fi and pop culture fan, you've seen it.
Exactly,
done,
yeah.
So she picked up on it, 10, 15 minutes
Yeah,
ago?
I had it figured out, right away what was going on.
And then I kind of ran with that and figured out another thing, and then she figured out the ending, and then, so it's kind of predictable if you've seen a lot of movies like we have. So with that, I would say it's definitely worth a watch on HBO Max.
Yeah, I'd say go watch it. If you have
sure.
HBO Max, definitely take a chance on it.
So with that, we'll go into our spoiler review. So
if you don't want to know everything, go away now, go watch the
Yep.
movie, and then come back and watch the rest of this review.
Yeah, because we have stuff to say and talk about. We're going to get right down and dirty into it. So here we go. It's your last warning. Spoiler alert. And okay. So
All right.
for those who are still here, maybe you watched it. Okay.
Okay, so my first thing I want to talk about is Edward Mordrake. Okay, I don't know. That's a legend on its own, but it was popularized by American Horror Story, Freak Show season. Wes Bentley played the character of Edward Mordrake, and it's this character that has a head on the back of his head, a la Voldemort and Quirrell, Professor Quirrell, you know? So that's what this is, basically. This movie it's a girl named Madison, only we find out later that her real name is Emily May. And she has a parasitic twin. She's born with a parasitic twin to a 15-year-old child.
Yeah.
Who's forced to give up the baby because her parents are religious. And also because the parasitic twin growing out of Emily's head is evil.
Kind of supernatural. Like, we can't really quite figure out. Like, they kind of make you believe it's a ghost in the beginning.
Which is one of the problems I have with it is, okay, and I told this to him too when we were discussing it afterwards. The big problem I have with like werewolf movies is the bones. Like, it wouldn't work. All the bones are different.
Well, let's first explain to him. In the movie, it's not just the guy in the back of the head.
Yeah.
He takes over her body and she works backwards.
So that's what I'm saying, is the way that she walks, I was getting there, I was explaining why.
Okay.
But that's why. With werewolves, that's my problem with werewolf movies, is the bones shouldn't bend the way they do. But I put my, belief aside and just, okay, enjoy it. It's a werewolf movie, I get it. And I do the same thing with this, but it was bothersome that when he fully took over her body, he would bend her limbs backwards so that he was walking forward and she was kind of moving backwards. And it looked like he was like breaking
it's the
her
sound
arms
effects they used
to make it like they were going backwards. And then when she took her body back over, it was just like, pop back in place, okay, I'm fine. And I was like, I feel like she should have had, like, broken limbs.
I feel like they were trying to give it that Ring feel, especially the very first shot when they show just the shadow of her.
Which makes it feel very ghost-like.
Which makes it feel like a ghost, which totally is there to just misguide you.
Didn't work.
That's all it was there for, is my opinion, the way it was shot. However, but in reality, he's taken over her body and putting her in a sleeper coma, basically, where she believes she's just sitting at home.
Living life.
But he's really going out murdering people. So he's physically there. Her body is physically there.
Doing all this crazy stuff.
Which, can we talk about the John Wick style action?
Yes, that's another issue.
It's cool. I'm not saying...
It did. It looked really cool in the movie.
But it was really... Like, okay, this guy has never really had a life outside of being part of this woman's body.
Right, he got shoved into her... Okay, so when they...
I don't know.
When they go to separate them, because they can't separate them because they share a brain, they basically just cut off all the limbs and then, like, they carve off the front of whatever his face was and, like, shove the rest of it into the back of her skull and then, like, close her skull up. And they're like...
And then
good job, us.
Yeah, and her abusive husband, when he pushes her against the wall, cracks her skull, and that's what's supposed to reawaken it.
Which brings us back to why it was so tragic, uncomfortably tragic for that first, like, 10 minutes. We meet this woman, she's pregnant, a nurse, she comes home, her husband then berates her for going to work while pregnant, and then blames her for, like, 3 other miscarriages that they've had, pokes her in the stomach real hard, so she shoves him to get him away from the baby, and he shoves her back so hard that it, like, dents the wall and her head's bleeding, and that's what wakes up her twin, her parasitic twin.
I like, he's kind of cartoonishly villainous. Like, he literally says to her, maybe you shouldn't be pregnant. And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
like,
so later when he's laying on the couch, I'm like, oh, this dude's dead. This guy's
his death was cool. His death was cool.
And his body was cool.
Yeah, they didn't show the death a lot, but his body was cool.
But you were saying the John Wick stuff, the
Yeah.
movement.
So there's a scene where he goes to the police station, literally single-handedly, backwards, kills all the cops. Every single one of them, John Wick style. Like, it's boom, 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 boom. I'm talking martial art moves, no guns, all with his knife.
He's got a sword, yeah.
Sword, knife, whatever he's got, yeah. And he just slaughters them all, and it's done in that John Wick fast-paced, one shot, one kill, boom, 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 boom.
Right.
And it's cool, but it's like, to see that in a horror, I guess, but it also kind of felt like, okay, are we a horror? Are we an action movie? It definitely lost
Is
the
it a ghost?
feel.
Is it possession?
Yeah.
And
he gets shot, so they shoot him several times.
And she's fine. When she turns back into her, when she takes back over control of the body and turns around so that it's her face.
Right.
There's no marks on her. Like, she's fine. Fine. She's able to lift a heavy gurney off of her sister. She's like, it was always my body, so if he was strong enough to move it, I'm strong enough. Okay, if it's always your body, he was shot and beat the shit up, and he fell all over the place, but you don't have a bruise on you.
No.
So
And he also can communicate and power electronics.
Right, he's like telekinetic or something.
Can she do that then? Like, that's, I don't know.
They share a brain, so...
By the end of the movie, she seems to, like, fully understand him and everything. And, like, how to control her mind to control him. And it's...
Right. It's when she finds out that he's... Her adopted sister went and figured out her... Because she didn't remember anything about him.
No.
From 8 on, she has no memories from age 8 before. She was adopted at 8, and that's where her memories start. So she had no idea about her history with her parasitic twin at all. They told her adopted parents that her birth mother died giving birth to her, which, spoiler alert, not true.
There's this woman that he captures and hides, and we're all trying to figure out how does she relate to the story.
Right.
Turns out to be her birth mother. But there is that one where she comes flying through the roof, in the attic, and she comes through to the living room and crashes down. That was a genuine surprise.
Yes.
I did not see that
I
coming.
didn't know she was in the house.
No. She's apparently locked up in the attic.
In the attic of Madison's house.
Yeah.
And the cops are there, and they had just tried to do some mental hypnosis to try and get her to remember. But anyway, the sister goes to the old hospital where they had performed all the experiments on her, and she figures out what happened to Madison, and as she's being attacked by the twin Gabriel, she tells Madison, he's the reason that your babies died, because you didn't miscarry. He was feeding off of them to give himself strength to come back.
Yeah, and that's kind of the turning point in Madison.
And Madison's like, oh, hell no. Like,
right.
You can kill all these cops, you can kill all these people, but now I'm pissed. It's not going to be a star maker for any of the cast.
It'll probably be forgotten.
Yeah. It's to be enjoyed and then put away on a shelf.
Or the studio's going to run with it and turn it into a slasher franchise, and it's going to be retitled to Backwards Man.
Right.
You know? And
Backwards Man in space.
Backwards Man meets Leprechaun. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. All right, guys, that's our show for today. So thanks for watching us, because we love horror.
All right, have a good night and good fight.
Bye.
And I think we both, we both thought it... there's a character who's the coroner or the mortician or whatever, the crime scene investigator.
Yeah.
And we both looked at... I don't know, for those out there who watch Lucifer, there's a character on that show, and her name is Ella, and she's the medical examiner. And it feels like this movie was almost ripping off her character.
It just lifted her out of the show.
But not the fun, interesting parts of Ella.
That's why it felt like it lifted her off, because it looked like somebody liked that, and when the actress was like, what's my character, they were like, have you ever seen this? And she was like, okay, and that's what she did.
Ponytail,
everything.
Yeah, it just...
Only not as charming.
No, she didn't have
She was fine.
She was fine.